You're listening to Exposed by the So Cultured Podcast.
We're your hosts,
Liv, Yaz,
and Taz.
three girls with a passion for science and tech.
Yep, and welcome to our thrilling new series.
This series, we are taking you on a journey to uncover the truth behind your fave TV shows and movies.
From the intergalactic adventures of Star Wars to the monstrous depths of the Meg.
And the chilling scenarios of zombie apocalypses.
Join us as we question whether these plots could ever happen in real life.
And reveal the scientific inaccuracies hidden on our screens.
And don't worry, we will still be dishing out the laboraTEA this season with some even crazier listener stories than ever before.
So grab your popcorn for a side of piping hot laboraTEA.
Before we get into it, remember that all opinions are our own and all our listener stories are alleged.
And now let's get into this week's episode of Exposed.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the So Cultured Podcast. We are on episode 5, which is actually kind of wild because it means we are past halfway this season, which I'm kind of sad about because I've been really enjoying this season.
Same.
Obviously, if you guys have enjoyed it as well, please let us know. Spotify has this brand new feature where you can actually comment on our episodes. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. And obviously, if you have really been enjoying the whole podcast, please give us a rating on like your streaming platform. It really helps us out. So yeah.
So I feel like my question of the week's always come from conversations that I have with my boyfriend. But he is actually going on holiday literally tonight. And yeah, basically we just got into like this whole conversation about flying, and then we started talking about, because obviously we did the Neuralink episode, we were talking about like Elon Musk, and we were talking about, is it him that's actually trying to fly people into space, or are we wrong for thinking that? Because we was trying to think who it is that's selling tickets into space.
I thought it was Richard Branson, but I might be wrong. I thought it was like the Virgin Air like space flight or something.
Is Elon Musk trying to do one as well, or no?
Oh,
Maybe.
It's like a race
I think
to
there was like a
space.
race against each other to try and do it, but I'm not sure.
Oh my god. And 250k, that is mad. I mean, you couldn't pay me 250k to go into space. Would you guys do
Really?
it or no? No, I actually wouldn't. Like, no.
If someone was paying me, I'd do it in like a heartbeat. Do you know what I mean?
Would
Like, I
you?
actually would.
Taz, would you go?
I'm quite like you, Liv. I don't really like, once I'm in the air, I'm fine, but the takeoff and the landing, I'm literally gripping the seat like, ah. So I don't know.
I'm very much an intrusive thought person. Like I say, I don't really like stress. Like I feel like my equivalent is I have very intrusive thoughts sometimes. So I literally, I remember when I was on the flight back from New York and I was literally stood in the aisle, and then genuinely all of these thoughts start running through my head of like everything that can go wrong, and they're like always so detailed, and that always happens to me.
Yeah.
So like I would just freak out up there. Like I feel like I'm a very like calm, level-headed person until it comes to like if I was in that, I'd be like, oh my god, I'm gonna die, and then I'd like bring down the whole ship because I panic and I do something wrong.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same actually. And when I went skydiving, like everyone had such a great time when they were skydiving, but I remember just like hurtling towards Earth and being like, what if we just keep falling? Like, what if it doesn't work? What if the parachute doesn't go up? And even when the parachute was up, I was like, one, I feel sick
get a hole in it.
because he was like doing loops and stuff. And second of all, I was like, what, when we get to the Earth, what if I break my leg or something? Like,
Yeah.
Whereas everybody else in that situation, I feel like was just having a great time because they were like, whoa, I'm skydiving. Whereas I was just like, I think, the intrusive thoughts were just there.
I wouldn't have even got there to that point where I'm actually doing the skydive. I would not even.
But going back to answer your question, I think I would do it because like the opportunity to go to space is just like, that's wild, to be fair. Like I would 100% overcome my fears and just go, because also with something like Virgin space flight, it's probably going to be fairly safe, right? So yeah, I would do it.
If you say so. I mean, yeah. Anyway, okay, so we're talking all about space. We talk about flying in space, and that brings us very nicely On to today's episode. As we told you guys last week, today we are exposing the franchise Star Wars. So let's get into it. So the Star Wars saga, created by George Lucas, takes place in a galaxy far, far away and spans multiple trilogies, standalone films, TV series, books, and more. It blends elements of science fiction and fantasy, bringing to life a universe filled with Jedi Knights, Sith Lords, droids, and epic space battles. While I'm absolutely not going to cover all of the individual films and series in Star Wars, like I'm not going to sit here and try and break down the plot to you, because the whole Star Wars plot is a very long and complicated series of events. But what we are going to do is discuss the general ideas and themes within Star Wars and talk about the scientific accuracies and inaccuracies seen in the film specifically. So I'm going to start this journey at the very beginning. So like I just said, I'm not going to tell you the plot, but let's give you the basic overview. So at the very beginning of Star Wars, there was nothing. But then through spontaneous generation enters three beings. So the whole of Star Wars starts with these three people, if you like. We have a father, a son, and a daughter. So the daughter was of the light, the son was of the dark, and the father was charged with keeping the balance between the two. Now, these three beings had the ability to create life, and thus the Star Wars universe begun. So, over thousands of years, many beings evolve throughout the galaxy, and a number of these beings become sensitive to what's known as the Force. So, eventually, they all gathered together on a planet called Actu, and they became what's now known as the Jedi. And some of the most famous characters from the franchise are Jedi. So, for example, Yoda, Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan, etc., they are all Jedi. And the Jedi dedicate themselves to peace and justice throughout the universe by protecting and defending those who cannot defend themselves. So basically their job is to use the Force for good. So it just basically use the Force to protect people.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Everyone says may the Fourth be with you, the Force, everything's about the Force.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, I've never seen these films. I just giggle when people say these things. But what actually is the Force? Is there something to it? What does it actually mean?
Yeah, good question. So being able to use the power of the Force is what actually gives the Jedi their extraordinary abilities. And these extraordinary abilities can be things like they have the ability to levitate objects, trick minds, so put thoughts in people's head, and they can also see into the future. They can literally just do a load of crazy stuff. If you see in the films, you remember, for example, seeing Yoda doing some crazy acrobatics or looking into the future. And these are both because he's able to use the Force. So you can think of the Force as basically giving the Jedi their superpowers, if you like.
Is it just the Jedis that have the Force?
Well, the director, George Lucas, said that everybody can use the Force, but only those that train and take the time to learn the art of the Force are the ones who do so, and that is the Jedi. Because to become a Jedi, you have to go through rigorous training, and this idea comes from the concept introduced in the films as midochlorian counts. Before we get onto midochlorian counts, very quickly, the Sith can also use the Force, but the Sith was basically formed from fallen Jedi. So basically the Sith are Jedi who have turned bad. And if we're getting very technical, there are a few other characters or aliens, if you like, in Star Wars who can use the Force. But general consensus is that only the Jedi and the Sith can use the Force.
But obviously saying the Jedi can train and then this midichlorian counts, it low-key sounds scientific. Are you gonna go on to say that the Force actually has some kind of backing of scientific evidence for the possibility of this being real? What are you saying?
Yeah, well, not quite, but it actually seems that the concept of midichlorians itself could actually, yes, be based on real science. So midichlorians in the film, let me break them down for you. So they are intelligent microscopic life forms that function as organelles within all living cells, and they live symbiotically inside the cells of all living things. And essentially, the more midichlorians you have, the better your ability is to use the Force. That's the concept in the film. Now, cause and effect is a really big debate within the Star Wars fandom. So some people say that midichlorians are what causes people to be able to use the Force. Some people say that it's just like a byproduct. But all we need to know is that the more midichlorians you have, the better you are at using the Force. Okay, we're not about to get into that debate. So, for example, the Jedi actually performed blood tests on their children before their order was purged by the Galactic Empire in order to figure out which of the children were Force sensitive. Now, the highest midichlorian counts belong to Anakin Skywalker, and that was around 20,000 midichlorians per cell, whereas an average human has less than 2,500 per cell, which is very interesting because if you've watched the films, you know that Anakin Skywalker is like his, Force abilities were the best out of all of the characters, and he was very, very powerful. Now, George Lucas actually said that the inspiration for midichlorians came from mitochondria, which are real life organelles in our cells that provide energy for cells.
The powerhouse of the cells.
I knew you were going to say that. I literally knew you were going to say that.
I really wanted to get it in.
I just got to be done, really. But like midichlorians, mitochondria are believed to have once been separate organisms that inhabited living cells and have since become part of them. So, for example, so we have mitochondria in all of our cells. So basically the idea is that mitochondria used to be like living within us, and then somehow over time they've actually integrated themselves into our cells. And I also think that comes from the idea that the fact that mitochondria, as we know, actually have their own DNA. Another fun fact for Star Wars and science nerds, in 2006, a newly discovered species of bacteria residing within mitochondria was actually named Midichlorians mitochondriae as tribute to the midichlorians, which I think is so cool that it's actually made its way into real science. And cool. Nate Lowe was the guy who discovered this bacteria, and he actually wrote to George Lucas basically saying like, hey, can I name this actual bacteria within mitochondria after the midichlorians? And that George Lucas gave him permission. It is, isn't it?
I love it.
So yeah, we have these midichlorians and they are based on mitochondria, which I just think is so cool. So if being more in tune with some mysterious energy to give you superpowers simply meant having more mitochondria, it could actually be as straightforward as visiting a sauna regularly, doing some high intensity workouts, or even doing some oxygen therapies, because these are all things that we know increase our mitochondria.
Or an ice bath, if you listen to that episode.
But there is no real scientific reason to believe that if you were to just increase your mitochondria, it would give you superpowers. But I do think it's very interesting to know that the midichlorians themselves are actually based on real science. And that was one of my favorite things that I found out while researching the science of Star Wars.
Yeah, I like it when it's things like this are like inspired from like actual science, because like
inspired's the word.
Yeah, I feel like people who watch Star Wars wouldn't think that is based on the mitochondria. Like you wouldn't just know that, would you? So
yeah, 100%.
Okay, but like moving on to the actual Jedi powers, obviously one power I remember is that they shoot lightning out of their hands. So is there like science, like what's the deal behind that? I want to know a bit more about that.
Yeah, if it could actually ever be possible. Can you imagine? We're just like shooting lightning out of our hands. So yeah, a few characters in the film do this, particularly actually Sith Lords like Emperor Palpatine. They have the ability to shoot lightning from their hands, and the term for this is actually Force lightning. And actually, we have spoke about a species of fish that can do something very similar before. If you guys cast your minds back to season 2, episode 4, the Neuralink episode, we spoke about the electric eel, which is a fish capable of producing up to around 600 volts of electricity. So these eels actually possess specialized electric organs controlled by the nervous system that are made up of electrocytes that generate electric potentials. Now, although humans cannot naturally generate electricity like eels, technological advances in electrical stimulation devices and bioelectronic implants explore the potential of using electric signals for medical treatment. So I don't know if you guys know this, but actually a lot of surgeons will use scalpels that have an electrical charge within them to like make cuts, like make more precise cuts during surgery. And also technologies like CRISPR could potentially make a version of these electrocytes in humans, meaning that one day humans could possess the ability to shoot lightning from our hands. Is it going to happen? No. But is the science in the film completely impossible? Also, no.
So maybe if it was like out of us three all getting this new technology implemented in us, we would then have to test our mitochondria and see if that had any impact on our ability to use
I think
this.
it's safe to say that Liv would have most of the midochlorian or whatever it's called. Because she's dense.
Oh, exercise. Yeah, because exercise does increase, I mean, specifically HIIT workouts, but exercise does increase skeletal mitochondria counts. So, yeah.
She's got the biggest
getting the ice baths, getting the sauna, do workouts, and you could be shooting some good lightning out those hands. Imagine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe that's one for the future. I don't know. So obviously, Taz, you were just mentioning how they could use force lightning, which I think maybe a little bit far-fetched, if I'll be honest. Sorry if you're a Star Wars fan and you're like, this is so true, this is real. But also, as someone who's not seen the films, but I'm just mildly aware of whatever's going on in the world, they use these lightsabers, and don't they have different colors? Like, I don't get what the different colors mean, but does the film actually say anything about the lightsabers and how they work, or could it be possible that we could like have them in the future?
Well, this is a good question, and actually someone has literally made a lightsaber. Like, I genuinely found several YouTube videos of people trying to make lightsabers, and I think the science of making lightsabers is a whole thing in itself.
Wait, so sorry, because I've not seen it, could you just explain what the lightsabers are used for in the film?
Lightsabers are basically like their weapons, so they use them like in fights, but basically lightsabers can literally cut through anything.
Okay.
What was it, Obi-Wan like cut off Anakin's like legs and arms, and that's why like he's like Darth Vader and he's in that suit. And he fell into like the lava river. But yeah, basically they can just cut through anything, and they're just, yeah, very cool. So before I tell you how someone has made a lightsaber, let's get into a little bit about how lightsabers actually work, because it's actually fairly well detailed in like the films or like books or like just the franchise in general. So generally speaking, only the Jedi and the Sith can use and make their own lightsabers. This is because, again, they're the only people who can like use the Force. It takes them weeks to make them. So each individual like Jedi Knight or Sith Lord or whatever, they all actually like have to train and learn how to make their own lightsaber, and it takes them a few weeks. And that is also part of the reason why each lightsaber in Star Wars is different and unique to the user. For example, Luke Skywalker and Mace Windu both have different lightsabers. Now, the main component of a lightsaber is something that's known as a kyber crystal, which can be found on several planets, but most notably the icebound caves of a planet called Ilum. Now, the crystal, like I said, is attuned to the Force, and it's connected to a Jedi Knight on a deeply personal level. The lightsaber itself is composed of 3 kind of different sections, if you like. So if you imagine like a lightsaber like standing up, at the bottom of the lightsaber is something that's called the power assembly unit, which houses something called the diatium power cell, which is basically like the battery of the lightsaber. And the battery is naturally recharging, so a Jedi never has to worry about the lightsaber running out of battery, so they don't have to like go and stick it on charge. That would be pretty inconvenient.
So it's like solar panel.
Yeah, I guess. I don't really know exactly how the battery works, but yeah, it's like self-charging. Maybe through the Force. I have no idea. In the middle of the lightsaber, we have something called the crystal energy chamber, which contains 1 to 3 kyber crystals. But often you need 2 individual kyber crystals because the primary crystal converts energy into the focusing crystal. The focusing crystal is what actually colors the blade. And Yaz, earlier you mentioned about like why they're all different colors. So when someone, like for example, when a Jedi picks up a kyber crystal, it will basically like not have a color, but then it will change color depending on like who picks it up. So you know how all of the Sith Lords have like red lightsabers? That basically represents like the dark side of the Force. And I feel like I'm like one of those English teachers now where I'm like, red symbolizes anger. But that's literally it. So the kyber crystal will like change color depending on who picks it up, and that's what gives the blade or like the lightsaber its actual color, if that makes any sense. The crystal energy is then converted to arc wave energy in the emitter assembly, which is located in the top section of the lightsaber, and then this obviously protrudes out to make the blade. I feel like this is peak nerdiness. I'm actually sat here explaining to you like the science of a lightsaber, but I kind of love it. Anyway, the lightsaber's blade, so the actual blade, the thing that like cuts everything, that is made of plasma, which is a form of superheated matter that contains a lot of energy. And this blade is surrounded by a magnetic stabilizing ring, which acts as the energy's containment field. But let's get to the point. Is any of this possible in real life? Could we actually make a lightsaber that is the exact same as it is in the films? Well, there was actually a paper released in 2019. And in this paper, they said that there is basically no way that anyone could ever make a lightsaber for a few reasons. Number one, because light cannot be contained. Basically, what they're saying is in order to actually contain light within a lightsaber, because it's not contained in an actual physical thing, that's like impossible. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
They also said that you can't make it solid. So like you can't make light solid, which is easy enough to understand. And also, like I said, you need a lot of energy, and they're basically saying that you would need an insane amount of energy. So I think they predicted it would cost like £250 million to make the energy needed to produce a real life lightsaber exactly as it is in the films. So they said that is impossible. But then came along Hacksmith Industries, which are a Canada-based engineering and prototype company that did actually create a plasma-based lightsaber. So they produced a functional plasma-based blade using a mixture of propane and oxygen, ignited to create a high-temperature beam that is capable of actually cutting through metal. So we're going to link the YouTube video in the episode description and you can go watch it. But they actually managed to cut through metal using this like real life lightsaber. There was a few differences. So unlike the compact self-charging diatium power cells in Star Wars, remember I told you that it's like naturally recharging, they obviously had to have an external gas tank and a power pack to power theirs that was carried in a backpack. This setup, while bulkier, it did actually provide the energy needed for the plasma blade. The blade's physical properties allow it to stimulate the cutting and burning effects of a solid blade, although it cannot interact with another plasma blade as depicted in the films. So you know how in the film, when I mentioned earlier, Yaz, that they would use them like in combat. So for example, like a Sith Lord would fight a Jedi Knight and they'd be fighting with their lightsabers. And like one of the most iconic things about Star Wars is like the sound of the lightsabers like hitting each other. But basically, although they were able to make a plasma-based lightsaber, the one that they made, they can't like hit each other. Does that make any sense? So as soon as it like...
They're gas-based or something, so they just like pass through each other. Or that because they're not solid.
Yeah, they just pass through each other, basically.
But do we want that? Do we want people to be walking around with these like backpacks and whipping out their lightsaber, being like, I'm ready to fight you?
Sounds like a euphemism, I'm not gonna lie.
I was thinking of something else.
Whack out their lightsaber.
Is that what you call it?
Oh my god. Oh god.
Wow. Anyway, moving on from that, I
Maybe
guess
Liv and Gage call it that.
because they're
Imagine.
like Gage's
Some
obsessed.
whip. Oh my god, he's gonna listen to this and cringe.
Oh, I lost my light.
Anyway, can you expose more of the science of the Star Wars franchise? Are there any other inaccuracies or things that could be a bit scientific, but it's more like inspiration rather than actual fact?
Yeah, so everything I've told you so far is inspiration, but let's get into some of the real science fiction, if you like. There's quite a few. I'm not going to cover all of them, so I'm going to quick fire a few for you. So let's start with the Death Star. Dun, 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 dun.
That's it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thanks.
What?
I'm glad I remember that.
What? Why are you saying what? Like you don't know what that is? Yeah.
Sorry, you've got to know that.
What's the Death
like
Star
little
though?
sequence. Oh,
I've heard it, but I don't know. One, how do you remember it? Two, what is it to do with the Death Star?
Okay, let me tell you. One of the most iconic scenes in Star Wars was the obliteration of an entire planet called Alderaan, and that was by the Death Star. So the Death Star in the film is a huge planet-sized space station and basically super weapon which was created by the Empire, and basically they made it to destroy planets with a single laser blast. Now, presumably, the Death Star uses the force that occurs when antimatter and matter is joined. We covered antimatter in episode 7 of season 1. So if you're interested in learning more about antimatter, Yas explained it for us in that episode. Now, the only problem is that the battle station would not be able to create a laser beam that would be powerful enough to destroy an entire planet, because in real life, antimatter actually can't be stored for more than several hundred milliseconds. So this means that the Death Star could not become real life.
I mean, thank God for that.
Let's go on to another scientific inaccuracy, which is the oversimplified landscapes of the different planets that are inhabited by many living beings. So within Star Wars, there are so many different planets that are referenced in the films. People travel to different planets. They're like, we need to go to Tatooine to do this. We need to go to this planet to do this. And when you go to the planet, there's like loads of different species on there. So while it's true that we don't know all the planets that exist beyond our galaxy, many of the planets in Star Wars have one singular type of landscape, which generally doesn't occur when a planet supports life and a lot of different species. So, for example, in the films, we have Kashyyyk, which is the Wookiee homeworld, and this is a planet that's covered in just dense forest. We have Coruscant, which is a city-covered planet that is the vibrant heart and capital of the galaxy, which has a diverse mix of citizens and lots of different creatures. Or we have Hoth, which is an uninhabitable ice planet. Whereas when we think about Earth, we have a healthy mixture of desert, ocean, jungle, icy region, and that's really key to sustaining many different species and life.
Obviously, I've not even really seen these films, but I have heard that people have said that the depictions of space and how they've made them in the films is a little bit inaccurate. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, that's very true. Specifically, like with the asteroid belts as well. Like that's one I hear people talk about all the time. Again, all Star Wars fans will remember the scene in The Empire Strikes Back, which is when Han Solo is flying his Millennium Falcon through an asteroid field, and he's like dodging all of these different asteroids. But according to astronomers, asteroid fields in space actually consist of objects that are generally millions of miles apart, meaning that in real life, the getaway would never have been like that dramatic.
Yeah, another thing is that there was like so many explosions in space in the movies too, but is that actually realistic? Like, wouldn't an explosion be like just a flash of light? I don't know. I don't know enough about physics in space, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's true, actually, that it would be more of a flash of light. And also, there wouldn't actually be an explosion sound because there's no air in space. So it would just be silent. And that's because the sound can't really travel.
Yeah, I love how you guys are also bringing in some facts too.
To be honest, I feel like I'm just throwing it out there that Star Wars is pretty inaccurate.
I was actually pleasantly surprised when I did the reading for this that they had actually tried to think a little bit about the actual science behind some of the concepts in the films.
Yeah, I wonder how like something like The Mandalorian, which came out more recently, or the more recent Star Wars films are more accurate than the older ones.
Yeah.
I would be intrigued to know.
Especially because there's like in what probably like the last 5 years, we've learned so much about space. Like what was it, like 2019 was like the first picture of like a black hole. Like so much has been done since, like you said, these films have come out. So yeah, that is a good point. Maybe we should cover that in the future.
Yeah, I think we couldn't do this series and not do Star Wars, so I'm so glad that you covered that, Liv. And if our listeners would, I don't know, maybe they have done even more research into Star Wars than we have and want to tell us about some more things based on science. So if you guys want to let us know in the comments on Spotify. And obviously, if you want to learn anything more about what Liv has spoken about today, there will always be links in our description as well.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And it's really cool, Liv, that you were able to take us outside from our own planet. And what we're going to do next week, we're going to be exposing the scientific inaccuracies and accuracies of the film The Meg. And don't forget, we've still got our laboraTEA section where I have some really wild gossip for you. We have an email that actually was sent in a while ago and we have completely missed it. So we apologize for the fact that we are responding to this a little bit late, but we hope you're still listening and we can answer your problem or dilemma. So I'm going to go straight in with the email. So it says, an associate professor, let's call him Ben, at my university in my department.
Hold on. We're not doing Ben. We're doing Gavin.
We're doing Gavin.
Let's not forget.
Okay. Sorry. An associate professor, we are calling him Gavin, at my university in my department started dating an MSc postgrad. We'll call her Charlotte, but for us, we are calling her Beverly. Beverly. It says the professor left his wife, they had kids, and yeah, they had this secret, not so secret relationship. A year and a half later, she starts her PhD and the professor gets weird. He's dressing more trendy. He dyed his hair black, grows his hair out to a 90s curtain situation. And this wouldn't be so bad.
Am I dumb? I'm confused already. The professor had a relationship with who?
The master's student.
And kids.
Well, it says he left his wife, they had kids, and yeah, they had this secret, not so secret relationship. So either he had kids with his wife or he had kids with this MSc student. So wait, let me get into it. Basically, it says a year and a half later, she starts dating, he starts getting trendy. It won't be so bad, but he's over 50. Then it says, so today, Beverly graduated. Okay. So it says Beverly graduated and walks across the stage of the graduation stage, and she is super pregnant. And Gavin is there congratulating her, touching her belly. And my friend, who is a teaching fellow, starts dishing the tea. She tells me and explains why Gavin has applied for sabbatical for next trimester, as Beverly has taken up a postdoc in the UK. And Gavin is also going to the UK. And none of the academics think that Gavin will come back. So obviously, that's just like the end of the email, but obviously they're based somewhere else.
Okay, let's break this down from the start because your girl is confused. What is going on?
Confused.
So he was married. So Gavin was married to his wife, had kids.
With kids, I imagine.
Okay.
I believe that's what it means.
So
he left his wife, they had kids. So yeah, he has kids with his wife.
So then he starts going through some midlife crisis and he's like got a new hairdo, he's got some trendy new jeans. And then
yep.
all of a sudden the master's student is pregnant. He's touching
she's
her belly at the
graduating.
graduation. She's moving to the UK, and then
Ew.
all of a sudden he's moving to the UK.
Yeah, and he's applied for sabbaticals.
Okay, so like I guess she's hypothesizing that Gavin and Beverly, Beverly Jr. is Gavin's. I'm assuming that's the hypothesis that we're going on here, is that Gavin is the reason Beverly's pregnant, or no? Am I jumping to conclusion?
No. It says like he's touching her belly and congratulating her. So I would assume that.
But also, this doesn't really add up, right? Because apparently they're going to the UK. She's going to the UK to do like for a job, but like she's pregnant as.
Oh yeah, what
Surely she's going to go on maternity leave soon.
Yeah, good point.
What are we saying? Like, do you like where does your mind go? My mind automatically goes MSc student must be under 30, which is really like presumptuous of me because she could also be 40s, 50s because he's over 50.
I feel like the average age for a master's student is like 22.
And then I feel like otherwise you would normally refer to them as like a mature student.
Without context, this is sounding very unusual because yeah, she's a postgrad, but he's in his 50s,
over 50,
impregnating someone who I'm assuming is, let's go with under 30 because we don't know anything about her
I'm going to say
age.
you're right, because otherwise why would the listener tell us his age? She obviously thought it was relevant to the story. So I'm going to say that you're right, and there probably is quite a big age gap, which there's nothing wrong with a big age gap, but
this whole thing just annoys me so much because this girl Beverly has just broken up a whole family.
oh, it might not be Beverly's fault. Beverly might not have known.
She didn't know that her professor's married with kids, that you would
Now
know
he could be
that,
like,
sorry.
oh, we're trying to go through the divorce at the moment. You know, men can gaslight women like, there's nothing going on. I'm trying to leave her. I want you. You know, like all the films portray it to be.
Exactly.
I've even had that, girls, where guys are like, I ain't got a girlfriend, blah, blah, blah. And then a few months down the line, you're like,
Have you?
wait, oh my God, have I not told you stories about this? Yeah, men
No?
lie.
Why? What happened? How did you find out?
I was traveling for work. I was at a conference and he was sending me TikToks about stuff. And on the TikTok, it says like, watch the video and follow said person. And on his account, he had a video of him and his girlfriend, and it was 2 years old. It was like a compilation of all the pictures and things of them two. And I literally sent it to him, like, what is this? And he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Yeah, like we've just known each other. We've been family friends. Like we were friends for half of that. Like we weren't together. And I was like, bro, like you were literally together. Like, what are you on about? Like these pictures and the videos, you're clearly together.
Oh my
But yeah,
God.
he was lying to me, saying like, no, like I'm not in a relationship. I haven't got a girlfriend, blah, blah, blah.
Wilder story than this is that one of my friends, actually, she was dating someone. He was like coming around to her house all the time, like literally like spending the night like several times a week. And then she saw on Facebook a video of him at his own gender reveal party.
Oh my God, are you
She
joking?
was like, what is this? Have you literally got a baby on the way? And he was like, yeah. And he was like with the girl.
Gosh.
Savage.
This happened at my previous work, you know. 2 like married people at my work kissed at a Christmas party.
Love work goss, guys. I actually live for it.
I think like academic work parties are even more wild than average.
Really?
Send in your juicy stories of your academic Christmas parties or work parties, graduation parties. We want to hear it all the goss of whatever's going on.
I feel like a lot of people are scared to send us in stories because they think that like we're somehow going to know it's them. But like we promise you the form is like completely anonymous. Like we literally, all we get is your text response, your story. That is all we get. Send us your juicy stories. We need the Christmas party stories because I don't go to work Christmas parties. So like I don't get this gossip. So I need to live vicariously through our listeners.
To be fair, me and
honest.
Taz can do it for you. I'm sure we'll be
True.
going.
Yeah, literally. I was going to say as well, at my last work was a bit wild, to be honest, thinking about it. One of my friends started dating someone at work, and she came into my office and she was like, where are all the best places at work to, you know? And then I was like, and then we were just sat there at lunchtime brainstorming all these places.
Like the
And I was like,
chemicals
the
room.
dark room, that would be the best.
Oh my god.
The store cupboard where we keep all of our supplies.
Are you joking?
Do people do that?
So let me tell you about this story, right? There was this, so I was on like a safety course, and we were learning about health and safety, whatever. And the guy leading it told us about this wild story, right? Because obviously my background is viruses, working in high containment facilities, and that's what the course was on. It was working in those facilities. And he told us of this story of this couple that were like obviously seeing each other, and they decided to, you know, have a bit of fun in a containment facility, and they ended up exposing themselves to some kind of like really infectious bacteria or something, and they both died.
Oh my god.
I think they're
From,
lying
like,
just for the training.
Bonking in the containment facility.
Why would they do that? They couldn't just wait
I don't
to
know.
like leave.
Well, it's just, I guess it was like a bit exciting for them.
But some people really have a fetish for that. Like they want to like have sex in like on a bus or something. I don't know what you're laughing
On a
at.
bus.
It's true. No, so I watched 90 Day Fiancé, and any of my 90 Day Fiancé fans out there, Gino and Jasmine, the couple, Jasmine has a fetish for, like, well, she doesn't have a fetish for it, but she wants, like, she really likes, she has a fantasy, is the word I'm looking for, to have sex in a public place. So they were on a boat once, and she was basically like begging Gino to have sex with her on the boat, even though there was like tons of other boats around them. So some people really have a thing for that. So if two people who have a thing for that meet at work, they're going to make it happen.
Yeah, but in a high containment facility where you...
Yeah, not ideal. So, yeah, I don't know. This is a wild story. I mean, she doesn't need any advice. Just thanks for sharing the story with us, I guess.
No advice given.
I also don't think Gavin's coming back, to be honest. I think the uni have lost him.
No.
They've lost him to Beverly.
And if Beverly's postdocing in the UK, maybe me or Liv might come across her and figure it out for ourselves and then expose the real her. Could you imagine? Like, she brings her baby and her man to the Christmas party and we're like,
oh my god, it's Beverly and Gavin.
It's Beverly, because he's got his 90s curtain look in his hair, you know, dark black hair. Nah, joking. It's all anonymous, guys. Please keep sending your stories in.
Oh my god. Oh, that's so funny. Okay, yeah. Well, thank you so much for sending us in your gossip. We absolutely love it. And this is a great example of how you don't need to have a dilemma. You can just literally share your gossip with us, and we will also share gossip back, because gossip for gossip, guys. So remember, the link to submit any of your gossip, any of your stories, any of your dilemmas will be in the episode description. So please do get sending them in. But with that, that is a wrap. So we will see you guys in next week's episode, where, like we said, we are covering the Meg, and we are also back with some really fun polls from Taz. So make sure you're following us on Instagram as well if you want to get involved in those. And we will see you guys next week.
Bye
everyone.
You've been listening to the So Cultured podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Make sure you listen in next week for more science and tech updates and the hottest laboraTEA.
You can stay up to date with us in between episodes by following us on Instagram and X at soculturedpodcast.
See you back here, same time next week.
Just watch me break it.